While the G-Pro X Superlight 2 and the Viper V3 Pro are definitely great staple mice in the gaming scene, not everyone can afford that because their MSRP is insanely high, and the Ninjutso 10 and the 10 Air are here to fill the gap. If you've either always wanted a Viper V3 Pro or a G-Pro X Superlight, or if you already own one and simply want something different and lighter, this is certainly worth checking out, and in this review, I'll tell you why. However, I will say that it does come with its issues, and we will be going through the entire list of those. But before getting into the full review, I do want to mention that this was indeed sent out to me. Huge shout out to Ninjutso for sending those things out, but rest assured, all my opinions are my own, and I will shit where there shall be shat on. And if you're at all interested in these type of mouse reviews, definitely make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell right next to it. Before we get into the unboxing experience or anything else, I do want to talk about the issues that I've either experienced myself or heard from other viewers. From what I can tell so far, on the wide units of the 10 Air, it does have a very flexy top shell here. It felt so funny to me that I kept actually pressing into the shell and formed a crack here. It only requires little force for me to press in, and this seems to only be an issue on the white version from what I can tell so far, because I have seen other people owning the black 10 Air and saying that the top shell feels rigid as hell. So if you want to make sure that your mouse feels as solid as possible, definitely get the black version of the 10 Air. Or simply get the normal 10 that feels slightly more rigid. It definitely has a thicker top shell as well. I will say that this is not an issue that I can feel in game. It is only noticeable when I actually press into it with my fucking thumb up here. And pressing into the sides, of course, it doesn't feel like a waxy mouse. It doesn't feel like an absolute brick. You can get to move it ever so slightly when pressing into the sides. But actually using the mouse in game, it is nothing that I can feel at all. I will say that considering the original Sora Superlight from back in 2022 weighed 2 grams less than this 10 Air, you'd think it wouldn't be needed to do anything like this these days, since mouse engineering has come such a long way. And I personally really hope that the thin top shell is not something that's gonna become a new standard for the industry, just to shave off 2 or 3 grams, because I would much rather have our mice be even lighter and even more solid. For Ninja Force, there's both a software and a web driver. The mouse is not usable with the web driver in a stock condition. You have to download the software, go into that, upgrade the dongle and a mouse inside of that software, and only then can you use the web driver. That is super annoying and very frustrating for the average consumer. And if I were Ninjutso, I would do a speed run just to make sure that this old firmware is actually usable inside a web driver, so that they don't need to download the actual software just to be able to do any sort of configuration to the mouse. I find it incredibly shady and very annoying when companies market with something that doesn't come out the box. But as you might already know, that is not something that Ninjutso are doing for the first time. And yes, I'm looking at you, hyperpolling dongle for the Sora V2. When plugging the stock cable into the mouse, and yes, you actually do need to use a stock cable because the port is very small, it felt like I was either breaking the cable or breaking the mouse when plugging it in. I even had my girlfriend plug the cable into the mouse and she thought she broke the mouse just because it required so much force to press it into it. So yet again, Ninjutso, please fix. I do understand that you want tight tolerances just to make sure that the cable doesn't move when playing in game, but who the fuck is gonna use a wireless mouse with this cable? It is so fucking stiff because it needs to be very well isolated for 8K polling, and nobody would ever play with this thing plugged in. So please, for the love of God, make the cutout bigger, make it suitable for all types of cables, and don't make it feel like you have to destroy your mouse when plugging it in. I've also seen several users with the mouse come unpaired to the dongle itself. And after spending over $100 on a new mouse with shipping included, that is super annoying. I also do want to mention that the sensor position is slightly behind the center, which can definitely be annoying for some people. Because of that position, it does feel like your sense is slightly lower when aiming from side to side. And I also do want to mention that the HyperSkates are incredibly hit or miss. You either don't mind them, love them, or absolutely hate them. And from what I can tell so far, the majority of the enthusiast community definitely hates them. Make sure to stick around during this review so that you know what they're actually like, and what you might possibly be getting yourself into. Anyway, that's enough of that segment. Let's actually get into the comparison of the 10 Air and the 10. As you can see here on my scale, with skates installed, the normal 10 Air comes in at around 48 grams. It actually comes in at around 46 to 47 grams with the HyperSkates because they're a bit lighter than the 100% PTFE skates I have installed right now. And the regular 10 comes in at around 56 grams, so that's almost 10 grams more. The normal 10 is $90 and the 10 Air is $100. You might be wondering, why does a mouse that weighs less cost more? And that's actually because they had to adjust their tooling and their mold quite a lot, which is not only more difficult to produce but also comes with more faulty units in production, and that is the reason why there is the $10 up price. The structure of the shell is a lot different. It is definitely more thin as well, and it doesn't feel as rigid as the normal 10. So if you're very schizo about build quality and hand feel, and also rigidity, I would definitely recommend getting the normal 10. And if you wanted to weigh 10 grams less, definitely get the 10 Air, but in the black version, because the white version definitely seems to have more issues with the top shelf flexing. Well, getting into the unboxing experience, you've already seen almost all of it so far. The USB-C header is incredibly tight and it feels like you're almost breaking your mouse when plugging it into it, and you do need to use it because of that super small cutout here in the front. You get the HyperSkates in a pad skate form, and then you also get these HyperSkate dots. I would definitely not recommend using these on glass. They definitely leave marks and are very loud, very scratchy. I cannot recommend them at all. And stick around during the review to find out more about these. You also do get some stickers, and that's about it. Oh, actually, I did forget to talk about the dongle. It lights up when you connect it, and if you have RGB turned off, it obviously doesn't light anymore. You can also have it shining in this very fancy RGB wave effect, and it actually does look very high quality. I was quite surprised when unboxing it over on my stream, but you cannot adjust the brightness of the RGB effects. Ninjutso, please fix. Because the default brightness is crazy bright in a dim room, and as soon as the sun sets, this looks like a freaking lighthouse inside of your room. Luckily, the dongle actually turns off automatically when you turn off the mouse itself, so if you actually want to sleep at night, just turn off your mouse. Now, getting into the most important part, the shape. The overall size is definitely almost identical to the G Pro X2 or the Viper V3 Pro. The Viper V3 Pro does feel a bit longer for sure, but the overall size and hand feel is very, very similar. It is a very safe shape, even more safe than the Viper V3 Pro, with zero flare towards the front. Whilst the sides on the Viper V3 Pro are pretty flat, they're even flatter over here on the Ninjutso Ten. And the hump is also very mellow, not too pronounced. It doesn't feel like a potato like the G Pro X2, and it is overall just super fucking safe. Anyone with almost any hand size can use this, unless your hands are super tiny. It's probably not too comfortable. Considering the state of the market currently, this is what we would call a big mouse. And if you've always wanted either a Viper V3 Pro or a GPX2, I think that you will feel right at home with this one and it would satisfy you more than enough. I've personally mained the GPX for about 2 years in my past, and I've also really enjoyed using the Viper V3 Pro. And after using both of those mice, I feel like the Ninjutso 10 is the perfect reimagination of that shape. It takes the best of both worlds, the safe sides of the GPX2 combined with the safe hump over on the Viper V3 Pro, and just makes it viable for all kinds of grip styles. No matter if you're fingertip, aggressive claw, relaxed claw, pincer claw, or even palm grip, although the hump is not too pronounced, I can definitely recommend it and it feels great. Getting into the coating, it almost feels glossy. It is very rubbery and definitely a bit shiny, as you can see by the reflection of the light. So I'd almost call this a semi-rubbery, semi-glossy coating. It is super fucking grippy as soon as your hand gets warm or even a bit sweaty. And when the temperature is above 25 degrees in my room, my hand absolutely sticks to this mouse. It's kind of crazy. I do think that this might actually deteriorate faster than other types of coatings that are similar, but so far there's absolutely nothing to complain about and it feels really nice. Now, getting into the deal breaker for me personally, the HyperSkates. These skates are molded. They're a sort of plastic composite. They are very thin, very hard, and not flexible at all. And if you put any sort of pressure into your cloth mousepad, they feel sticky. I am currently at 45% humidity in my room, which is rather low. And on no matter what cloth pad I use these skates, they feel sticky when pressing into the pad, and doing any sorts of micro adjustments just feels painful to me. I have seen people who have highly praised these mice, and I'd assume that they are using very fast cloth pads, because on my Raiden or my Infinite Speed V2, these feel a lot better, simply because there's less friction between the skates and the surface itself. But if you at all care about mouse skates, you're probably not gonna like this. They feel super fast when putting no pressure into the pad, and there is pretty much no dynamic friction. It is much faster than normal 100% PTFE skates like this. but as soon as you put any pressure onto the pad, the friction just spikes up like crazy. So if you don't put any pressure into your mousepad at all, I don't think that you will have any issues with these, and they probably will last you rather long. But if you are here thinking that there's a break-in period and they might get better, no, they just get even slower. So what I will recommend you doing is go over and grab yourself some core pads. These are 100% PTFE, and it makes the mouse feel so much better if you're used to conventional PTFE skates. Now, for the buttons, this actually gets pretty interesting because these use SPDT switches. This is the same mechanism that we've seen on the OP1 8K and the XM2 8K, for example, where their KLGX switches have a metal contact plate on the top and the bottom of the switch. So as soon as you press that switch down and there is no more contact to this plate up here, your switch activates, and that is very fast. It definitely helps with the click latency, and so far I haven't had any double clicking, so I'm assuming that their default buffer settings that you also have inside of the WebDriver and the software are pretty solid. They also have this HyperClick tensioning system or whatever it is. Basically, it's a small metal leaf that actually sits on the contact of the micro switch itself, which should in theory help with the uniformity of the click, so no matter where you click it should feel the same. I have seen several reviewers saying it's incredible and it feels super uniform, but honestly I really don't think it's anything to write home about, and I think it's much more of a gimmick than it is an actual feature. Yes, I will say that there is virtually no pre-travel no matter where you click, but it still feels a lot more heavy towards the rear, a lot more light towards the front, and the further forward you go there will also be more post-travel. And when comparing this so-called absolute no pre-travel to other mice I have here on my desk, it honestly doesn't feel special at all. Pretty much every mouse that releases these days has minimal pre-travel, and it is nothing that I can actually feel a difference in. I can still slightly move the button before actually actuating the switch, and that is simply very normal and just something that you'll see in every mouse out there. I will say though that these switches are definitely spammable, which is very nice to see these days in the world of optical switches. I really hope that SPDT mechanical switches will become the new standard because these are really awesome. It not only comes with the latency benefit, but also with the click feel benefit of it being a mechanical switch. And if you're a fan of clicky, but also spammable switches, I think that you'll really appreciate this implementation. The side buttons are absolutely fine. There are no build quality issues or anything like that. Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 does have some side movement. You can definitely get them to wobble around, but it is nothing that is a real issue. I've never felt anything in-game that has annoyed me. And the scroll is pretty light. It's definitely spammable, but the scroll click is a tiny bit too heavy for my likings. And since you guys have been asking for it, here's also a sound test. In terms of battery life, I've been using it on 2K for a week straight and I have only had to charge it once, so that's pretty solid. Now, if you actually want to use the WebDriver, the first thing that you're going to have to do out of the box is go over to the software download and then click on the Ninja Force firmware update. You can then go ahead and open that software and do your firmware upgrade inside of that. Simply go up here in the right corner where it says firmware update, and then follow the instructions here. Once you're done with that, you can go over to ninjaforce.co where you can do all of your settings. First of all, you can see all your settings at a glance, which I find very nice. You do also have multiple profiles. Then over in the performance segment, you can set your DPI. You can actuate the HyperClick, which is the SPDT. You can set up your motion sync, lift-off distance, and if you're using core pads, I would definitely recommend using the medium setting. You can set up your slam click prevention, which is very useful for the HyperClick especially. I've set it to low and I've not had any misclicks so far. Then you got your sleep timer, your polling rate, and in the personalization segment, you can set up your dongle. Me personally, I just turned it off, but the RGB effects look pretty cool, although you cannot change the brightness of it, which is very annoying. Then there is the settings tab, and that's really about it already. Now, getting into the conclusion, who is this mouse for? Although the out-of-the-box experience is not very good, considering the skates, the dongle pairing issues that I've seen, the WebDriver not working out of the box, the cable being super tight, and some other minor stuff, I still think that this is a very, very good mouse at $90 to $100. I would still much rather buy this mouse, put on some core pads, and call it a day, rather than spending up to 180 euros for the new Superlight 2C, or getting a Viper V3 Pro or a GPX2 for a similar price tag. Paired with some proper skates, the in-game feel is very nice. I prefer this shape a lot over the original GPX2. It is a lot less of a potato, it is very safe with its flat sides. It is viable for all grip styles, for all hand sizes, unless your hands are tiny. And if you are willing to do some tinkering with the software and also the skates, I can definitely recommend this thing. Just please make sure that if you're getting the 10 Air, get the black version, because we have seen the top flexing a lot over on the white 10 Air version so far. And if you're very schizo about build quality and prefer a very solid feeling mouse, definitely get the normal 10, which weighs around 10 grams more. After putting on aftermarket skates on this thing, tinkering around with the software and getting the WebDriver to work and not having any issues so far, I do think that I actually prefer it over my Viper V3 Pro as well. The only thing that annoys me over on the Viper V3 Pro are the flares that go towards the front here, which is simply not a thing over on the 10. I think that they've created a very good shape. It is a perfect alternative to the shape of the Viper V3 Pro and the GPX2, and I think that pretty much anybody can use this thing unless you just don't like bigger mice. The RGB dongle is a pretty neat touch, but because it doesn't have a brightness slider, it is pretty much a gimmick to me personally. But it is nice to see that Ninjutso now has a 8K dongle out of the box, so we don't get any of that Sora V2 PTSD anymore. But that's about it for this video. Definitely make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell right next to it if you're at all interested in these types of reviews. And I'll see you guys pretty soon. Peace out.